Okay, this video is part 2 of Belle Epoch, the beautiful time, the golden age of Europe. And we're talking about the art, Christian art of Europe, and a couple things about history, but then I'm going to get mostly into the fun stuff. Okay, I just wanted to show you, here's the painting of Isaac Newton at his cottage in Woolsthorpe in 1665, Anno Mirabilis, where he, developed optics and gravity. There's the apple that fell. Voltaire wrote about him a lot. And how Isaac Newton was intensely religious. He spent more time writing about the Bible than he did doing science. He said, atheism is so senseless. When I look at the solar system, I see the earth at the right distance from the sun to receive the proper amounts of heat and light. This did not happen by chance. He who thinks half-heartedly will not believe in God, but he who really thinks, has to believe in God. I have a fundamental belief in the Bible as the Word of God, written by those who were inspired. I study the Bible daily. All of my discoveries have been made in answer to prayer. Okay? So that's, pretty much how it is. And you'll see that's pretty standard amongst the great scientists. Now, you can look at a great debate. I sort of wrote a debate between Fyodor Dostoevsky and Nietzsche. Nietzsche was a brilliant guy, but he was also a real strange guy. I think he was a homosexual, and that was part of his attraction to the ancient Greeks, which was his specialty. And he was sort of always criticizing Christianity, but he could never come up with anything better, and he probably died of syphilis from the brothel, okay? Fyodor Dostoevsky feared that Russia must become more Christian or it will go back into slavery, and that's what happened. It didn't become Christian enough, and it went back into slavery. Okay. He was the great author of Brothers Karamazov. Charles Dickens was the greatest of the English authors who wrote a lot of books about, Christianity and finding happiness and kindness. Okay, like Christmas Carol's the greatest novel ever written. There's a painting by Harold Cropping, Tiny Tim Was Saved. Okay, here is Jonathan Swift, Gulliver being tied down by the Lilliputians, and like we said, that's what happens when anybody real smart and good comes along. The Lilliputians start to censor them and block them. Okay, this is a nice painting by Johann Vibray. I got to get it to switch. Okay, here is Stanchek, painted by Jan Matejko in Poland, 1862. I've made entire videos about Matejko and Stanchek, so we're not going to get into any more. I'm just showing you some of the great paintings. Here is Faust on Easter Morning by Johann Kraft. And when he saw all the happy families, he remembered his own childhood, and then he felt happy and he sort of decided to give life a chance again. This is a great poem by Goethe, the German author. I'm just showing you a little bit of literary stuff, and then we're going to get into the regular painting. So here is The Bishop forgiving Jean Valjean in Les Mis, the great novel by Victor Hugo, this painting by Darren Ashby. And he became the greatest man in France after that. Oh, I had 2 copies of this one. I didn't mean 2 copies of this one. Here's a painting of Ophelia when she drowned in the poem Hamlet. Magnificent painting, sad painting, but magnificent, by John Everett Millais. He was kind of the leader of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood of Painters in the mid-1800s in England, who said they wanted to go back to the style of painting before Raphael, more faith-based, more accurate, traditional in nature, not just beauty. And obviously, as sad and awful as this painting is, it's also magnificently beautiful. And John Ruskin, of course, promoted the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood of Painters, magnificent, primarily Protestant painters in England in the 1800s. They were kind of awesome, actually. Okay, I guess I had 2 copies. Some of these paintings, it took me a while. There were so many things to organize. I had some doubles. Here's Sir Humphrey Davy, a great chemist. He was a mentor to Michael Faraday. And again, he does everything out of his appreciation, love, and to honor God. And that's very common in the greatest minds who ever lived. Okay, here's Michael Faraday, another one of these incredible genius upon genius of the science. And he was in England. He's born poor, got a job in a bookshop, read lots of books. He self-educated himself to become a great scientist in electricity and chemistry. And here's a typical quote by Michael Faraday. The book of nature which we read is written by the hand of God. Okay? Scientist in the 1800s in England. Absolute genius. All right, here's a nice painting by Georges Seurat. This one's at the Art Institute in Chicago. It's called Sunday Afternoon at the Island of the Grand Jatte. So rather beautiful and tranquil. People enjoying themselves in the sun. Peaceful day, a bunch of Christians. Okay, now here is a great painting. This one's by Winslow Homer, The Lifeline. And it's sort of the man is saving the woman. You know, the boat had crashed and they were going to drown, and they figured out how to save her with this tow line. And the man is anonymous, you know, damsel in distress. Sort of the heroic nature of man celebrated in the 1800s. Here's another painting of the undertow. So an undertow is a current of waves by the beach that can pull people underwater and get them to drown. So the man has saved her, saved the two women. And by the way, when I was young, I was in 8th grade, I was in Puerto Rico, and a woman was drowning in an undertow, and I went back out in the water and saved her life. That is a true story. Okay, here is the baptism by Jules LeBlanc Stewart. So the baby just got baptized in the water, so another water story event here, and nice picture of the family. So that's a nice thing about all these Christian holidays. It gets the whole family together so they get to know each other and they can help each other. Christians now, their families are all broken up with divorce and loss of religion, and they don't help each other as they should. The Christians are the biggest religion in the whole world. There are about 2.3 billion people. But because they're so broken apart by divorce, they're broken apart by lack of religion and lack of maintaining the religious traditions, that they don't help each other that much. They're kind of oblivious to what's going on. And because of that, their status and power in the world is dramatically reduced compared to what it was in the past. There's a nice painting, Sunday Morning by Edmund Layton. Okay, here's a nice painting by James Tissot. He was actually a French artist, but he sort of became Anglicized. Okay, he's a French Catholic, but he went to England and did a lot of his painting there, James Tissot. And a rather beautiful painting of, you know, the family. You know, that's what makes people happy, is their family. Okay, so here they are caught on the garden bench. It's a rather nice picture there. Okay, here's spring flowers, the ladies chatting with each other, looking at the flowers. Here is Tea Leaves by William McGregor Paxton, and they seem a little bit in a fuss, you know, but it's still an elegant painting. And then the next one's even more elegant. This is Tea Time by Frédéric Solacroix. He's a French painter. And just the dresses, the background, the facial expressions, you know, it's beautiful. This is that whole joy of life. You know, what were they afraid of, the people at that time? They were afraid of being kidnapped by Muslims if they were out traveling and being sold into slavery. Okay, here is Cathedral, Salisbury Cathedral by John Constable, the painting. The two man and woman are going for a walk there. Rather beautiful. Here's A Happy Family at Christmas Time, Ferdinand George Waldmüller in 1844. Christmas makes winter the most joyous time of the year, even though it would otherwise be cold and bleak. Here's a painting that was a new one for me that I really like, Contest for the Bouquet by Seymour Joseph Guy. So the kids are all kind of climbing and scrapping to see who's going to get the bouquet. So a nice family scene. And again, you notice in these old houses, there's a lot of paintings. There's some symbols of, you know, maybe hunting or ancestors and relatives. This idea of the family as a thing in continuity with its ancestors, and it respects its history, its tradition, its country. All that stuff is good. That's how it should be. Okay, here is Going Around the Bend, you know, painting from 1900 by Edward Lamson. And this is part of that idea that one gets of technological excellence, that people had this confidence in science that it was going to improve their life. Travel was getting better with the steamboats. It was getting better with the improved roads, with the improved railroads, okay? And there's also a bit of a joke here that, you know, how are these two ships going to get past each other? The waters are kind of narrow, but they're big enough for the two ships. And then the guy who's supposed to be working the ship is asleep, okay, while there's another ship coming around the bend. So, little story there. Here's a nice painting called The Train Station 945 Accommodation by Edward Lamson. Edward Lamson Henry. And again, it's rather beautiful. You know, the men make sure that all this stuff works, the technology works. The technology of that day expanded your ability to travel. Here's another worker painting, Ford Madox Brown, the men making sure the roads are good. Carlyle is one of the men looking over here. And here's a fun painting in England. This is Private Viewing at the Royal Academy in 1881 by William Frith. And it was actually, the painting was made in 1883 based on the private viewing of the Royal Academy in 1881. And this relates to the aesthetic movement of art for art's sakes. And there's Oscar Wilde. I think I maybe have another picture of it. But that's also characteristic of Christians. They love all this art, and they celebrate it, and they view it, and they pay money to buy it, and they maintain the tradition. Okay, so here's Oscar Wilde. For some reason, I had a quote of Oscar Wilde in here. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. To win back my youth, I would do anything except exercise, wake up early, or be a useful member of the community. All right, here's a painting, Afternoon Tea by Arturo Ricci. And there's a lot of, this is like those novels of England, the Victorian novels. A lot of them were around romance. Earlier one was Pride and Prejudice, but then you got all the William Harvey novels, Tess of the D'Urbervilles, the Charles Dickens novels, and the other English writers of that time. And it's a lot of this stuff, social intrigue and stuff, but there's that aspect of it's kind of fun. Okay, here's Storyteller by Vittorio Reggiani, and the guy's dressed up like a bit of a dandy, but you can see they're happy, and there's this sense of life, that our lives are important and meaningful, and how fun it is for us to be with each other. It's just nice. Okay, here's a painting, again by Frédéric Solacroix, the French painter, and look how beautiful the clothes are. It's called Flirtation, and obviously there's an elegance and a beauty to it, a leisure time to it. Nowadays most of us are working 9 to 5, kind of in the rat race, if you will. See how elegant and beautiful this is? Okay, here's another fun painting by Arturo Ricci, the Italian artist of this time, the Golden Age. And, funny games. They're flirting, they're playing blind man's bluff, and everybody's sort of happy, having a good time. Okay, now here's a painting by Eugene Blas, and this is what he called it Pleasure. And it's kind of a funny name, A Woman with Food. And basically, men, I think, are a lot more simple than women. That's what a man wants. He wants a woman that he loves. He wants her to cook for him. He wants her to make the 2-bag beast with him at night. He wants to have a family with her. And that's about all a guy wants. A guy would be happy living in a cardboard box. He just wants her around and the kids and something to eat. Whereas a woman wants a lot more. She wants the house to be nice. She wants to show off for her friends. She wants to go on vacations. She wants a lot more than he does. All right, here's a painting called The Love Letter, also by Eugene Blas. And you can see they're kind of happy chatting with each other. Women like to talk to each other a lot. Men, we talk about stuff, but we don't talk that much socially like the way women do. Okay, now here's a painting by Carl Spitzweg in 1880. The Intercepted Letter. So the lover from the floor above is passing the letter down to the window of his lover, but looks like Mama or the nanny's there, and she's going to intercept that letter. Okay, this one's called Paying for Peeping. So the young guy wants to see how the older guy is putting the moves on the girl, and he's caught peeking through the tapestry, and so he's about to get his bottom spanked there, by John Callicott Horsley. Okay, here's the old man talking about the good old days, Fighting His Battles Again by Charles Spencelea. And what I'm trying to show you here is that just the art of the 1800s was magnificent. Afternoon Tea, I might have showed that one twice. It's nice. Okay, here's Café Glope by Jean Berard, the French artist. And again, it's just elegant and pretty. And that was back in 1889. Pretty nice. It looks almost modern. Here is Holiday by James Tissot, the English, French Catholic English painter. Just, again, joyful, beautiful leisure. Here are the rivals in the conservatory. The ladies all like this guy, so they're all kind of angling for a position to make him choose them. But that's what I mean. They got time to sit around and fall in love and try to choose or be chosen. Okay, sharing a song with the ladies. So a lot of time was spent just talking and chatting. And now they're getting ready for the music recital. The recital. The guests are arriving. Mama is there, and the piano is ready to go there. And here's a young lady kind of warming up on the piano. The guests are getting seated for the piano recital. The man is going to give a little speech before this part of the piano recital begins. It's called The Monologue by Jean Berard, 1882. And all again, everybody's dressed up and happy, having fun. It's kind of classy and terms of the classical music, when you learn classical music, you learn not just to enjoy the music. You hear the history of it, the history of the composer, the time it was written. It's very educational and it's very enjoyable and it gets everybody together. I like indoor concerts better than outdoor concerts. I've been to lots of them. Girls at the Piano by Pierre-Auguste Renoir. That reminded me of my old girlfriend, the musician. It's a great hobby is to play piano. You can do it your whole life. Okay, now here's some lovely paintings. This is Bianca by William Holman Hunt. He's one of the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. Isn't this just magnificent how beautiful and elegant she is? I thought it was an awesome painting. Okay, now here's another one. This is the Harp Soloist. This one is by Frédéric Solacroix, and he's almost as interested in painting her dress and her gown and her cloak as he is the person and everything else. But again, it's elegant and it's beautiful. And this is a Christian thing. Other cultures, they don't make art like the Christians do. The Christians are the best by a factor of 1,000,000 compared to other groups. And like I said, the caveman painted, it's a sign of higher civilization and culture. Western civilization mostly means Christian civilization. And everybody wants to live in countries that the Christians developed. Everybody in the world wants to live in these countries. And then they have the nerve to say Christians are racist when everybody wants to come in their country and live with them. Okay, here is a violin recital. Again, this one is by James Tissot, and everybody is, packing the stairs, trying to get a seat, enjoy the concert. So Christianity should be proud of itself. Europe should be proud of itself. It's the highest that civilization has reached. It doesn't need to apologize or take in refugees. It should say, look, we made a great country. Let's appreciate it. Here is a recital with this one with the Cardinal. So the Cardinal is in attendance. This one was by Luis Alvarez Catala. And again, this is a very common theme, making music. Okay, here's piano recital by Arturo Ricci. They're just one after another beautiful paintings celebrating music, tradition, family, history, romance. It's all great. Music recital by Luis Alvarez Catala. Okay, now that was just in the daytime, in the afternoon, going to the music recital. Now they're getting ready for the nighttime event, which is to go to the ball, dressing for the ball, and he brings her this big slipper with decorations, reminds you of, Cinderella and the magic slipper. Okay, here she is getting ready for the ball. Another one, this one by Luis Alvarez Catala, one of the great artists of the 1800s, the Belle Epoch. Okay, here she is going to the ball. This one's by James Tissot, a young lady being escorted there by her father. Okay, now they've arrived too early. Everybody's just sort of sitting around talking. The show hasn't really started, but the ball will be coming tonight by James Tissot, 1873. Okay, now they're dancing. Society Ball by Eduardo Leon Garrido. Some people, have a costume mask. It's going to be a costume party. There's the orchestra up there. Everybody's having fun. There's another painting, Dancing by Eduardo Leon Garrido. Beautiful costumes. Okay, here's the Vienna Ball, Wilhelm Gauss. And again, it's lovely. The building is lovely. The paintings on the wall, the tapestries, everybody all dressed up and nice in the best finery. This one is the Ball by Victor Gilbert, in a pretty well-lighted place for 1889. Okay, here's another picture of the ball by Wilhelm Gauss, another version of the ball, and the men are all dressed up. They've got their medals on, their best outfits. Here's one at the ball by Frederick Vezin, and they're dancing, very romantic. The men got the tuxedos on, the ladies got their best dresses on. Here's one, the ball by Jules LeBlanc Stewart. The point I'm showing is they've got a whole way of life that's beautiful, elegant, happy, family-centered. It's great. So this is all from the 1800s, especially the late 1800s. So anyways, I just wanted people to have a sense of that because I think it's magnificent. And just to show them how, since those times, which Ayn Rand had called the Great Golden Age of Europe, and it's also called the Belle Epoch. And she said the novelists, the writers, the authors, the culture of that time was light years ahead of us. And she said to read Victor Hugo, one feels as if they're walking into a cathedral. He's magnificent. And also she said the greatest novel ever written was Henry Sienkiewicz' Quo Vadis, about Christianity. And then the other magnificent novel, of course, Brothers Karamazov, etc. So anyways, that's just to get a sense. I got more of them. I enjoy all this stuff. I got tons more paintings. I hope you enjoyed that.